It's no fault of Elvis, he loved the song.
The rhinestones may sparkle, and that famous grin may warm a room in seconds. Yet Dolly Parton carries secrets sharp enough to cut glass. Reporters saw glitter and charm, but backstage doors rattled with slam frames, angry voices, and friendships left in pieces. One chart-topping singer stormed off and swore never to share a stage with her again. Another rival tried to snatch her most prized song, confident she would stay quiet, only to trigger a lifelong rift that still sizzles today. 5 big names discovered the hard way that Dolly forgives slowly, and the scars from those showdowns remain wide open. To grasp these feuds, you must meet the girl who once sang to chickens for pocket change while her mother plaited her hair on a front porch that shook in the wind. Dolly Rebecca Parton arrived on January 19, 1946 in a one-room log cabin in Locust Ridge, Tennessee, with no running water and 12 restless siblings crammed wall to wall. Her father left farm by daylight and built fences by moonlight, unable to read or write. Yet Dolly still calls him the smartest man she ever knew. Her mother obviously loved stories, hymns, and mountain melodies, gifts she passed to Dolly like priceless heirlooms. Music was not a hobby, it was survival. So the children learned harmony in church, then perfected it on splintered porch steps. That raw talent blazed early. By age 10, Dolly charmed Knoxville radio and television audiences, and soon stepped onto the legendary stage of the Grand Ole Opry. The morning after high school graduation in 1964, she stuffed her suitcase and caught a bus to Nashville with nothing but a notebook of lyrics and dreams taller than the Smoky Mountains she left behind. At first, she wrote songs for other singers, but writing alone was never enough for a heart bursting to be heard. Her breakthrough single, Dumb Blonde, landed in 1967 and proved this bright-haired newcomer was nobody's fool. The same year, she joined the Porter Wagoner Show, and everything changed overnight. Millions watched each week, mesmerized by the playful banter, the sparkling costumes, and a voice that soared like sunrise over misty peaks. Soon the duet partners racked up hits, yet Dolly's solo fire kept growing, and by the early 70s she blazed her own trail. Jolene arrived in 1973, a haunting plea that turned into an anthem sung in every honky-tonk from Texas to Tokyo. Then, I Will Always Love You floated onto the airwaves, a gentle farewell that later thundered around the globe when Whitney Houston covered it, sending royalties in Dolly's direction for decades to come. While yacht-buying stars flaunted wealth, Dolly quietly invested in stories, songs, and her people. The 80s proved she could conquer any stage or screen. She starred in 9 to 5 beside Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, turned that title track into a working-class battle cry, and showed Hollywood her comic timing was as sharp as her pen. In 1986, she opened Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, turning hometown hills into a booming theme park that created jobs and pride for communities she loves. Behind the sparkled Dolly revealed a mind as bright as fresh snow on a winter ridge. Thousands of copyrighted songs, shells of Grammy Awards, and a place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame tell only part of the story. Her imagination library has mailed millions of books to children, proving that the girl who once held lessons by land and light wants every kid to open a page of possibility. Yet even the Queen of Kindness has limits. Throughout her rise, a handful of insiders underestimated her, tried to control her, or claim credit for her brilliance. And Dolly never forgot. The earliest and messiest conflict exploded with the man who gave her first nationwide spotlight, then fought hard to keep it for himself. Before Dolly ruled the airwaves, Porter Wagoner was already country royalty, famous for rhinestone suits and a voice as smooth as Tennessee honey. His self-titled television program was syndicated coast to coast, drawing millions of fans who loved his showmanship and strict business sense. When Porter hired Dolly to replace his former singing partner Norma Jean, some devoted viewers booed her, wrote furious letters, and begged for Norma's return. Porter stood firm. Dolly smiled to the sting, and together they chased chart after chart, their harmony sparkling like shattered light on a disco ball. But what happened next was even more shocking, and the fallout turned Nashville gossip into wildfire that still crackles whenever the two names are spoken in the same breath. Their blend was pure gold, their stage chemistry electric, yet jealousy, contracts, and bruised pride waited just offstage, ready to erupt. On stage, Porter and Dolly looked unstoppable, stacking more than a dozen top 10 hits while rhinestones flashed under scorching lights. Yet offstage, the air could be sliced with a knife. Back in those glitter-filled days, Porter Wagoner was already the king of syndicated country television, and he wanted more than duet magic. He wanted complete command over Dolly's blooming talent. He booked every appearance, set each set list, and even picked which dress sparkled on camera, treating Dolly like another prop in his tightly scripted world. At first, young Dolly played along, because that stage put food on her family table and her own name in neon, yet ambition grows louder than applause. She kept notebooks of fresh lyrics from a mountain heart, and many of those tunes never fit the safe Porter and Dolly recipe he guarded like buried treasure. Night after night, she walked off stage with cheers ringing. Yet in the dressing room mirror, she saw an artist boxing tighter than the corsets beneath her gowns. By 1973, the private arguments left both of them raw, and Dolly finally told Porter she needed to fly solo, only to hear him warn that the show could crumble without her. Even so, she stepped away in 1974, giving a sweet smile to cameras and pretending the split was gentle, while every nerve in her body pulsed with relief and dread. The relief faded in 1979 when Porter struck back with a thunderous lawsuit demanding $3 million for lost fees, production costs, and a share of all earnings since her walkout. The figure stunned Nashville insiders, and gossip columns dripped with claims that the mentor had become a jailer who now wanted back rent on her freedom. Reporters begged Dolly for dirt, yet she refused to fling insults, choosing instead to sell behind closed doors so she could breathe at last. The legal clash left scars because Porter had been her early champion, her duet partner, and a man she once trusted with her future. Friends say she wept after court hearings, grieving the friendship while still defending her right to steer her own ship. In one heartfelt interview, she repeated the painful plea made to Porter years earlier, quoting her own words in full. "When I was trying to leave the show, I had told Porter I'd stay 5 years. It had been 5, and it was 6, and it was 7. He was just having a really hard time because it was going to mess up his show. We were very bound and tied together in so many emotional ways, and he just would not hear it." The quote proved money was never the deepest wound. The wound came from feeling owned, and that realization cut deep. As the 80s rolled on Dolly's sort of movies and business, yet she also sent polite notes to Porter, inching toward peace because anger weighs heavier than any stage costume. By the late 80s, the former duo spoke on the phone again, swapping jokes instead of threats, proving that time can turn poison back into perfume. Then in 2002, Dolly stunned the crowd by inducting Porter into the Country Music Hall of Fame and praising him through grateful tears. 5 years later, lung cancer placed Porter in a hospital room, and Dolly hurried to his side with prayers, guitars, and memories of dazzling days that once bound them. When Porter passed soon after, she organized a private tribute at Dollywood, singing to the smoky mountain sky not for headlines, but because the circle had finally closed, bitter and sweet. That showdown forged steel in her spine. Yet another storm was brewing with a very different voice. Enter Linda Ronstadt, a powerhouse who joined Dolly and Emmylou Harris in the dream project known as Trio. In the mid-'70s, the three women vowed to blend their voices like sunrise over rolling hills, but record labels argued and tour calendars never aligned. After a dozen false starts, the stars finally clicked in 1987, releasing the album Trio that rocketed to platinum and captured a Grammy, leaving critics dazzled. Fans heard pure heaven. Yet inside the studio, tension buzzed like a frayed amp cable, because Dolly loved first take lightning while Linda chased microscopic perfection hour after hour. Emmylou joked that she deserved combat pay for keeping the peace, and even Dolly later laughed yet admitted she nearly screamed during those slow-burning sessions. The tug of war grew heavier when they tried to craft Trio 2 in 1994, as label red tape and schedule crashes froze the project on dusty shelves for 5 long years. By the time the sequel finally landed in 1999, the friendship had cooled, the spotlight dimmed, and the bruises were hard to hide behind polite smiles. Linda spoke openly about her frustration, declaring that Dolly often arrived late, canceled rehearsals, or vanished for solo obligations, leaving perfectionists fuming inside the control booth. She even called Dolly a little flaky, a jab that thundered through fan circles, and hinted the partnership was beyond repair. Dolly kept her answers soft yet firm, saying she loved Linda but would never let any project change her the way Porter's show once did. During depositions, lawyers once paraded royalty statements, hotel bills, and even costume receipts, painting a picture-creative partnership turned corporate war zone that left fans stunned. Industry veterans whispered that Porter expected a lifelong slice of her songs, a promise he believed was sealed with shared applause. Friends say Dolly wrote, "I will always love you" as both goodbye and apology to Porter, proof that breakup ballads can earn millions while tears dry slowly. Meanwhile, Linda's hunt for sonic perfection flowed from her own chart-topping legacy, and she feared any rushed line might tarnish the brand she built with grit and sweat. Studio engineers remembered Dolly spinning jokes to loosen tension, while Linda counted beats in strict silence. Two different roads to greatness crashing under fluorescent light. In private letters years later, Linda admitted she still admired Dolly's genius, yet felt their creative clocks ticked on opposite rhythms no metronome could ever fix. The spark that created still lights radio playlists. But behind those harmonies sits a cautionary tale showing that even golden voices can grind when egos, schedules, and dreams collide. Linda Ronstadt didn't hold back. She openly said she felt Dolly's lack of professionalism ruined what could have been a joyful and powerful collaboration. It stung. And while time softened some of those hard feelings, the truth is that tension never fully disappeared. Years later, they exchanged polite words, maybe even a few laughs, but the warmth never came back. There were no big fallouts after that, but there was no rekindled friendship either. The trio's legacy lives on in the hearts of fans. But for Dolly, Linda's harsh words still echoed, leaving a bitter aftertaste she never quite forgot. And speaking of lingering tension, the next clash Dolly faced wasn't just with fellow artists. It was with the king himself, Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, and Dolly Parton, the queen of country. You'd think these two legends would have joined forces in a magical music moment. But what actually happened was far from magical, and left a scar that never quite healed. Back in 1973, Dolly wrote one of the most personal songs of her life, "I Will Always Love You." It was about leaving her longtime partner and mentor, Porter Wagoner. She poured her heart into every line, and the song soared, becoming an instant hit across the country charts. What she didn't know, Elvis Presley had his eyes on it. The king wanted to record the ballad. His team reached out, and at first, Dolly was thrilled. Elvis, singing her song, it felt like a dream. But then came the nightmare. Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, demanded 50% of the publishing rights if Elvis was going to record it. Not just a fee, not a favor. He wanted half the ownership. Dolly was stunned. This was her song. It wasn't just about business. It was about her identity as a songwriter. She stood her ground and said no. She told the colonel, "This is the most important copyright in my whole publishing company, and I can't do that." Elvis never recorded the song, and Dolly was crushed. She later said Elvis truly loved the song, and she could tell he was deeply hurt by her decision. She admired him. She respected him. But she couldn't let her work be taken from her, not even by someone she idolized. After that, things between them were cold. Dolly said there was never a harsh word from Elvis, but she could feel a shift. He was sensitive, and the rejection left a mark. Still, that bold choice changed her life forever. Years later, Whitney Houston's version of "I Will Always Love You" became a global phenomenon. Dolly kept full rights and made millions from it. She's often said she never once regretted turning down the deal, because for her, standing up for herself meant more than pleasing the king. But Elvis wasn't the only man who tried to take advantage of Dolly's image. In 2008, someone else crossed the line, so far that Dolly was left devastated in front of the entire world. Dolly has always been known as graceful, kind, and never one to stir up drama. But in 2008, even she had her limits. That's when radio shock jock Howard Stern went way too far. Famous for being loud, wild, and completely unfiltered, Stern had built a name on saying the unthinkable. But this time, he wasn't just controversial, he was cruel. In a segment on Howard Stern show, his team took Dolly's audiobook recordings and twisted them into a fake interview. They edited her actual voice, splicing clips together to make it sound like she said awful, disgusting things. It was full of offensive, vulgar remarks. They even made it seem like she insulted Kenny Rogers, Linda Ronstadt, and joke about her own body in humiliating ways. They played it for laughs. But it wasn't funny. It was a complete attack on her character. Fans were furious. And Dolly? She was heartbroken. She rarely speaks out against people. But this time she released a public statement. She said, "I have never been so shocked, hurt, and humiliated in all my life. I cannot believe what Howard Stern has done to me. In a blue million years, I would never have such vulgar things come out of my mouth." Those words hit like thunder, because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was someone using her voice to tear down her entire image. Dolly, who had worked for decades to represent kindness, dignity, and grace, had been mocked in the worst way possible. And while Stern brushed it off as just another sketch, the damage was done. Dolly never sued him. She never shouted back on air, but she never forgot it, and neither did her fans. Dolly Parton doesn't threaten legal action often, but when she does, you know it's serious. After Howard Stern's vile 2008 audio prank, she was pushed to her breaking point. She said, "If there was ever going to be a lawsuit, it's going to be over this. Just wanted you to know that I am completely devastated by this." That hit hard. Fans erupted in support. Country stations, lifelong Dolly lovers. Even casual listeners flooded online threads defending her character. But Howard Stern, he didn't blink. He laughed. He brushed off the entire scandal, claiming it was just a joke. He refused to apologize, saying people were being too sensitive. To him, it was satire. To Dolly, it was cruel, calculated, and personal. She didn't forgive him. Not for a long time. They never crossed paths again after that ugly broadcast. And as usual, Dolly didn't scream back. She stayed classy, avoided the press storm, and let her fans fight for her. But even years later, the wound never fully healed. And then came the shock of all shocks. In 2023, Dolly walked into Howard Stern's studio. That's right. After 15 years, she appeared on the Howard Stern Show for the very first time. No one saw it coming. But Dolly had a mission. She was promoting her bold new rock album, Rockstar. This wasn't just a promo stop. It was a power move. If she wanted to rewrite the story, she had to face it head on. Howard was unusually respectful. He called her a legend. He praised her energy and voice. But the tension? Still there. It was clear that if not for the album, Dolly never would have shown up. But even so, she handled it with grace. She didn't bring up the past. She didn't throw shade. She simply reminded the world that she can walk into any room, even one that once hurt her, and still hold her head high. And just when you think everyone respects Dolly, here comes someone from left field ready to stir the pot. Jeff Tweedy, the frontman of Wilco and a respected name in alt-country circles, isn't known for chasing drama. But that changed when he made some very pointed remarks about Dolly's songwriting. And it didn't sit well with fans, or with Dolly herself. During an interview, Tweedy admitted he admired Dolly's success and legacy, but then turned around and called her lyrics superficial. He didn't stop there. He compared her to other songwriters who, in his opinion, had more depth. To him, Dolly's music leaned on catchy hooks instead of complex messages. He implied her fame came more from her personality than her pen. And then came the jaw-dropper. When asked if he disliked Dolly, he said, "No, I love Dolly Parton. All I know is that she wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You on the same day. And I think she should have stopped after Jolene. It wasn't hateful, but it was dismissive. And it struck a nerve. Because Dolly doesn't just write songs, she lives them. Her lyrics come from her childhood, her heartbreaks, her roots. To criticize her words is to criticize her truth. And even though Dolly didn't respond directly, reports said she heard what he said, and she wasn't pleased. She's always been vocal about the struggles of being taken seriously as a songwriter. She's described the long nights, the emotional toll, and the personal experiences behind her biggest hits. So, hearing someone reduce her work like that, it had to hurt. Still, Dolly stayed silent. Because while Tweedy's comments caused a stir in music circles, Dolly knew her place in history was secure. Her songs have been covered by legends. Her lyrics have comforted millions. And her writing continues to cross generations. Whether or not critics approve, her pen has shaped American music. Because at the end of the day, Dolly's career hasn't just survived feuds and insults. It's thrived in spite of them. She's weathered every storm, stayed kind, and stayed strong. From Porter Wagner to Linda Ronstadt, from Elvis to Howard Stern, and even Jeff Tweedy, Dolly has faced them all with grace. So now we ask you, which of these moments do you think left the biggest mark on Dolly's journey? Tell us in the comments. And if you're into juicy stories and behind-the-scenes celebrity drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss what's next.